Welcome to today's episode of the Experiment Zone podcast. I am interviewing Bina Colman from Compassionate Callers. She and her company help families with elderly take care of people in their homes and make sure that they have all the support that they need. We go through their website today and really make sure that the mission and how they help people is really clear in the copy and layout and the user experience of the site. And so you'll see us do a live conversion audit, and you'll walk away with some great tips that you can apply to your store too. Let's jump in. Today, we are speaking with Bina. And Bina, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. My name is Bina, as she said, and I am a gerontologist. I have a degree in gerontology. So that's a little bit about my background, which is very niche, but it's the study of the elderly, which brought me to start my business called Compassionate Callers, where we were calling people up to 5 times a day, 7 days a week for anything. I mean, it could have been medication reminders, meal reminders. I live in Arizona. If anyone's listening to this, it's very hot in the summer. Water reminders, or just a quick hello. And just recently, we merged with a company called Parent Projects, and we're using Compassion Callers in a little bit different way now.
And Bina, this is why I love doing what I do, because conversion rate optimization, a lot of people think of it as strictly e-commerce, but really any business that wants to communicate and connect with people that can use their services can benefit from what we do. So I love it. Keeps my life interesting, and I love hearing what you guys are up to. Tell me a little bit about your goals for the business this year and how conversion rate optimization or just conversion rates matter for you.
Yeah, of course. So with this new merger, my goals have shifted a little bit, and I'm kind of just jumping in and getting my feet wet right now. But my new title is Head of Patron Engagement. So for all of our clients, I am the one that's just going to make sure that they are getting what they need, that they're getting the correct vetted resources, that they are having a good experience with our compassionate concierge. That's sort of how we merge our businesses. So that's my new role. I'm the head of patron engagement. And then for the conversion, working with you guys, I mean, truly, yeah, it is very important. If someone converts and becomes a client, we call them patrons, and creates a project for their aging loved one.
And so what are some of the goals that people have? So we'll kind of switch gears to talk about the website a little bit more specifically. So what do you want them to know about working with you? And what are some important things that they would find out about as they look?
Yeah, very important. Something right off the bat that I can think of is if you are going through caring for an aging loved one and it's overwhelming, which it is, you just might not even know where to start. And that's kind of where Parent Projects was created, was to give you this platform to just put everything on, have a compassionate concierge at your service at any time to really walk you through what your next steps are, whether, in each case is individualized. So every case is going to be different and everybody needs different things. So it is an overwhelming process that we're hoping to ease people's minds and take their worries away.
What are some of the reasons somebody might reach out? What creates some urgency for them in getting your support?
Yeah. So that's a great question, because it does happen. If somebody fell, if an elderly person fell, they're in the hospital and now they have to go to a rehab facility, then they got to go somewhere else. That's a really big one. It's a lot of moving parts. And again, I hate to use the same word, but it's overwhelming just to know they're in a safe place. They're going to get the correct rehab they need. They can eventually return home one day. So that's always a really big one. Or if someone got dementia, if someone gets a new diagnosis of dementia, they're finding out it's not safe for them to be living home alone anymore. Or even if it is, an elderly couple, maybe that's not the safest situation to have 2 older people living together if one has dementia and all this stuff is going on. So those are just 2 examples.
It's really relatable. I mean, I'm sure many people listening, it's certainly something that's happened in our family where we've had a family member fall and suddenly it changes everything about what their situation looks like.
Yep. Or you had to go through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's part of what life is like, right? We want to age, we want to be successful in our lives and live long lives, but things happen as we age, and unfortunately, we have to deal with those challenges as they happen. I want to talk a little bit about how people find out about you, and kind of a part two of that question is: are they doing it on their mobile devices? Are they sitting down and doing it at their computer? So, how do people find out, and what's kind of the context that they're in to find out about you?
Yeah. So when you mean, are they like doing it on their phone? You mean when they've created their project, or do you mean when they've actually found our website?
That's a great question. How about both? Let's talk about both scenarios.
So, I mean, we do that. We do social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram for that, of course. We are currently in the process of starting some big campaigns. So that will get the word out even more. More to come on that for sure. And then when someone goes to the website, they kind of just go through the natural stuff of what Parent Projects is and all this, and then they can sign up. And there is a 30-day free trial. I take that back. It might even be more days now, but there is a free trial that someone can start using right away, and it really gives them that opportunity to make sure this is a good fit for them.
That's great. Well, we'll jump into it in just a minute. So as a reminder for our listeners following along today, we are going to be doing a live conversion audit on our podcast today. And so the way that we do this in each episode is that I'm going to screen share. So if you're following along and watching along on YouTube, you'll be able to see the screen with us. If you are just listening to the audio today, we're going to be describing what we're seeing. And very importantly, you can actually pull up your own site, because we're going to talk about really specific things for our guests today, but we'll also be talking about general concepts that really help to bring home the message so that prospective customers can really understand what your business is selling. All right, so I have parentprojects.com up on our share screen today. And one of the first things I always look for on looking on the site is to answer 3 questions. So I'm actually not looking yet at the screen. I'm going to be looking for, what is this website about? Who is the website for? And why should I work with this company? So here I am looking above the fold, personalized resources for busy families. So there's the who, right sizing an aging parent. Make sense of the noise, learn what to do, and connect with local professionals experience with your situation. I think we get pretty close on this initial brand message, but I think there may be a bit of a gap between what you were describing and what I'm seeing here for how you might help. So maybe we can brainstorm together some potential changes here. So when it says personalized resources for busy families, right sizing an aging parent, can you tell us a little bit more about what that really means?
Yeah. So when it's kind of a play on words, instead of downsizing, you're right sizing it, which is very clever, because you always hear when people age, they're going to downsize. But yes, they probably still are going to, but we want to make sure that it's not just a downsize to downsize. It's the right size for your loved one. So whether, you're moving from a 3,000 square foot house to an apartment, or you're moving from an apartment to a facility, whatever the case is this the right situation or the right sizing for that person?
And why do some families care about that? What are some of the motivations to care about that?
So the motivations for that is truly the safety of that loved one. Is it safe? Is it secure for your loved one, your person, to be living alone? Are they having more falls? Are they forgetting to take their medicine? Are they not showering, eating? A lot of time people stop brushing their teeth. So it's all these little things that can really add up to some dangerous and not secure situations.
Yeah, and I think that's what I took away when we talked earlier, is really the word safety was in my mind. And so I'm glad to hear you say it too. I think that there's the right sizing an aging parent, which is the what is happening, but this message could be stronger with a little bit more of the why. So it's not just about getting through the noise, but it's about finding safety and making sure that your loved one is healthy and safe in their living environment. So I think a tip here would be to kind of refine this second line here to really start to use those exact words that you said around safety and health and wellness, and potentially even highlight some of the scenarios in which it comes up
on the front page
right away, so people know
okay.
what are we here for. what are we getting? We're getting resources because we're busy families and we have an aging parent that we want to help right size. Why do we want to do that? Why with this company? We want to make sure our loved one is safe and healthy, and we want to learn what to do to make that happen.
Okay.
But overall, this layout looks really nice. You've got a really clear hierarchy of the text here. So I know where to get started on the page. You have an action or a button here, a call to action to learn more. Sometimes we want a little bit stronger wording here. And I see we have a get started up here. So we might also consider reflecting that here, like a get started now.
So like the same wording.
Get started is a little bit stronger. So what we find is like action-oriented words can really help people say, oh, I'm ready to get started. What do I do? Oh, I click here to do it. Learning more is a little bit more of a passive experience and tends to be language we use in more like a secondary, which is exactly what's happening in your nav. Your nav has get started as the main one and learn more as more of that secondary action.
Okay.
All right. So scrolling through here, helping America right size well. As your projects pick up, there's little room for doing it twice. There's all the resources. Tell us a little bit about the project itself. What is the project?
So that's a great question because that's the most important part. The project is actually what someone will start for their loved one. So a project could be anything like, let's say if, God forbid, my mom fell. That would be a project of me starting that to say, my mom fell. I don't know what the next steps are. She's in the emergency room now. Let's figure it out. Then let's say my uncle also fell. Then I would say, I start a second project. My uncle fell. He's in the emergency room. What do we do now? So that's what a project is. It's a very individualized goal or project for that person to make sure their steps are correct and they're going to get the best care they can in their local area.
And so in the case of moving from a bigger house to a smaller house, maybe a smaller house to a higher touch facility, would those be two separate projects or one project?
No. So each person can have as many tasks as they need in their project.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So then that's how you represent it. Okay, great. Yeah, so I think here, this is, we're hearing a little bit about how you support families, what it might look like. The introduction of projects here, I think because it's such an important kind of framing of how you work with families, I'd like to see it more specifically mentioned, like described before we say, as your projects pick up, there's little room for doing it twice, right? So I think potentially removing this sentence so that you can really have it be, this section is teaching you about what we do is we help you right size, and our parent projects are doing these things, and then the check.
Okay.
I love this list here. Gathering facts, collecting family expectations, what to discuss. This gives me a sense of like, it's not just advice on a call, but I'm really getting an action plan and a real project for supporting the situation we're going through. And we get the nice get started button. So glad to see a nice CTA in this section. The images here are highlighting kind of a combination of the projects themselves, right? These three screens. And then images of the family. What is this middle one? Is there a delivery component, like a physical component to this?
Well, I think that's more saying you're moving somebody.
That's moving.
Like, we'll be there to help you move. Yeah.
Because
also people do move to be closer to their adult children. So they could be cross-country moves or down the street moves. So yeah.
Great. Okay. So what might be a good use of these different images is breaking apart the what of what a project is, which this section feels like it's really teaching us about the projects. So these three images really resonate with me. And then these other three are really like why you would want a project or how a project helps you. So I'm hopeful that as we scroll down, we're going to hear more of those examples. But if not, we can talk about how to introduce it up here. Okay, so leverage technology to organize the web in your most difficult situation, aging in place, downsizing location, end of life. I actually think these three examples are really helpful to start to see and relate to our like individual, like why I'm here, what kind of situation is going on for my family, and why a project might be helpful. So I would be tempted to switch the order of these two things, because this is really the solution. And this is really saying, from a customer-centric perspective, here's what you're going through. Here's how we help you. And then here's like the details of how we help you. So kind of starting with the user, being user-centric with the message, getting a little bit more granular about their situation, and then helping them visualize how they'll work with you. So I would switch those two sections. And then this overlay that happens here, this is kind of a small detail, but can be hard for people to observe or notice, particularly on mobile, is when you hover, that's how you get more information instead of having a quick description, or maybe not needing that text at all, right? Aging in place, it's no surprise many want to ride it out in their forever home, and taking the right steps can extend their autonomy. It could just be that these are the common situations. Click to read about how we help people in this particular scenario. As I click through, I do get to an aging in place page, which is what I expected, to be able to really learn about how you might help, how I can work with parent projects to help with aging in place. So now I'm going to scroll down. We have a lot of content here, downloadable resources, social media. I think there's an opportunity here to really talk about this situation and why a project would be helpful before getting into this other related content. So I expected to read about aging in place. Like, what are some of the challenges? Why might I want to have a family member age in place? How complicated is the decision or not? How can parent projects help in this place? With a call to action to reach out and get started. So
that's interesting.
Building out some sort of, I'd call it a hero section as well, but some sort of landing section to this page to really introduce the what and why of aging in place, and then why parent projects. Almost thinking of it as like a mini landing page or a homepage about aging in place.
Okay, great.
And that'll give people things to kind of grasp onto. Versus this other content could be very useful, but you can imagine, okay, I'm going to read about combating caregiver isolation. That's kind of taking me off track of, we have a family member who fell and we want to help her age in place. Right. But I like this kind of clarity of organization here of like, these are the common ways to think about the situations happening.
Right. Agreed.
That's where we can help. This is a little distracting. I could leave it or take it, really, this little movement that's happening in that part of the page. We really want people to like feel comfortable and confident that this is the right business to help them. This can reinforce that a little bit, but it may also kind of distract them from jumping right into specific content.
Interesting. Okay.
What we bring to the table, we have a magazine, business, media, family planner. Is this the main part, this last section here, the family planner connect?
Yes, so that is the platform is where you can write everything, actually.
So tell us about the relationship of that versus these other three items that are what we bring to the table.
Yeah. Okay. So that magazine, or the e-magazine, it's going to be a lot of kind of what we saw scrolled up above with like the 5 tips and, I think it's going to be a lot of tips and a lot of good information for people who may just be getting their feet wet with understanding that their parents have these diagnoses, who've never thought about it before. So that's the e-magazine. A verified business network, we call it VBN, is a business that we have vetted. So the vetting process is something I take very seriously, because that is something that the patrons will be using. And that could be a resource for anything: home care, home health. I mean, we go down all the way to mobile pet grooming, because if someone has a pet and they live alone and they're elderly, we want to make sure that they don't have to drive just to get their pet washed and groomed. So we really break it down to around 72, if not more, categories, and they are going to be certified vendors within each category. The podcast is a podcast where we talk to our vendors or VBNs, excuse me, and really kind of just learn how they're going to help those in their local area. This is nationwide. So, there could be a home care agency in Arkansas. I don't know why. And then there could, here, obviously, because we're local in Phoenix. And so that's where the podcast really gets to shine a light on that VBN. And then the Connect is kind of what I was talking about before. That's the project. So within the VBN, you can create tasks. You can set up, store your insurance information or your aging parents' information, doctor names and numbers. So it's all in one convenient spot, especially if there's siblings, adult children all over the country. To have one platform like this is really, really nice. So if one adult child can't pick up the phone and one needs to talk to the doctor, all they got to do is jump on there and they can grab that information.
I love it. You guys are doing a lot of really good work to support families. I think some of that's getting lost in the way this is displayed. I almost am tempted to say, what if we had a dedicated section about not just learn more, but if we had something where we have, in addition to the podcast and the e-magazine, we have ways to kind of help people jump into that content. So using the nav to do that could be a good way to do it. Could be that each of these sections just gets a little bit more space on the homepage. Okay. Because what you want to think about is like, what's the primary reason people are coming to the site, or the primary way you want to connect with them or have them reach out. But then you also, if you want them to kind of be able to come back as a resource to see the e-magazine over time, that may be motivation to give it its own landing place in the navigation. Time flies fast in our audit series.
Are we already done?
Almost at time. So I'm going to ask my favorite wrap-up question. So what are 3 things? We talked a lot about different things on your homepage today. What are 3 things that either we talked about or you were thinking that you want to do to help improve the conversion on the site?
The 3 things that I would choose, I really, really liked what we just talked about, actually. I thought that was very helpful because like you said, it is a lot of information. It's all needed and it's all useful. That's a lot. Will you scroll down a little? Maybe a little more clarification on the right sizing. Like you said, make it like kind of more, really say what it is there. And we didn't even get into this.
Yeah, so, and I think just looking at this part, just to throw one more thing out there, is like, I think this like free trial kind of language and helping people know that there's something to try out can be really helpful and powerful to actually use as the language, right? So
great.
Get a free trial.
Mm-hmm. So if you scroll up, I can show you, or I can tell you one other thing. I know that was only 2. You mentioned, and I actually completely agree, the get started, learn more, like this learn more front center button should say get started, just a little more cohesiveness.
Perfect. Well, thanks for recapping what you took away today. For folks listening along at home, I think that hopefully there's many things that you're thinking about for how to introduce what you're doing. Bina, I suspect a lot of people are listening and want to hear more about how they can get help supporting their loved ones.
Yeah.
How can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me right at the website, parentprojects.com, or at bina@parentprojects.com is my email. And that would just be how you get a hold of me. And I want to say thank you to you, AJ. This was great. I thought this was very educational, to be honest.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad it was helpful. And it was so nice to see you again. And thanks for being on today. Thank you for tuning in to the Experiment Zone podcast. You can check out more episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and your favorite podcast apps. Check out the show notes for any websites linked in this episode, including where to connect with us on social media. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you'll be updated of each episode release. And visit us at experimentzone.com for all podcast updates as well. Appreciate you dropping by.